They say some moments change your life forever. For me, that moment didn't happen in some grand, cinematic setting. It happened in a borrowed tent, under a sky full of stars, with my best friend lying inches away from me, the same best friend who had sworn, countless times, that he was completely, utterly, 100% straight. My name is Alex, and this is the story of how a weekend camping trip turned my entire world upside down. This is the story of Jake, my best friend since college, the guy who dated more women than I could count, the guy who never once gave me any reason to hope for something more, until he did. What happened between us in those tents wasn't just about attraction or desire. It was about two people finally being honest with themselves, about the terrifying beauty of letting someone see the parts of you that you've kept hidden for so long. It was messy, complicated, and absolutely real. This is our story, and if you've ever wondered what it feels like when someone you never thought you could have suddenly looks at you like you're the only person in the world, well, you're about to find out. The text came on a Tuesday afternoon, while I was pretending to work on a presentation that was due in 3 days. Jake, Jude, camping trip, this weekend, you, me, Marcus, and Liam, no excuses. I stared at my phone, already formulating 17 different reasons why I absolutely could not go. Camping with Jake had become something I actively avoided over the past year, ever since I'd finally admitted to myself what I'd been feeling for him. What I'd probably been feeling since we met 4 years ago in that overcrowded introduction to psychology class. Me can't, got that presentation Monday. Jake, it's Tuesday, you have almost a week, stop being a hermit. Jake, also Marcus is bringing his new boyfriend, so I need you there or I'll be third-wheeling the entire time. Jake, please, I'll buy all the beer. I sighed, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The logical part of my brain, the part that had kept me safe and firmly in the friend zone for 4 years, was screaming at me to say no. But there was another part, a quieter, more desperate part, that wanted to say yes. That part missed Jake, missed the easy way we used to hang out before I complicated everything by falling for him. Me, fine, but you're also buying the food. Jake, YSSSS, you're the best, pick you up Friday at 6. Me, 6:30, I'm not a morning person. Jake, dude, it's literally evening. I smiled despite myself, tossing my phone onto my desk and trying to ignore the anxious flutter in my chest. 3 days. I had 3 days to prepare myself for a weekend of watching Jake be his effortlessly charming, devastatingly straight self. Friday came too quickly. I stood in my apartment at 6:25, double-checking my backpack for the 3rd time, when I heard Jake's trademark knock, 2 quick raps followed by 3 slow ones, a pattern we developed after too many nights of pizza deliveries and unexpected visitors. It's open, I called out. The door swung wide and there he was, filling my doorway like he always did, all 6 feet of athletic build, sun-streaked brown hair that was just a bit too long, and that smile that had gotten him out of more trouble than I could count. He wore a faded camping hoodie and jeans that fit him in ways that should be illegal. Ready to commune with nature? He asked, grabbing my backpack before I could protest. Fair warning, Marcus and Liam have already been making out in the back seat for the past 20 minutes. It's disgusting and adorable, and I hate it. That bad? I laughed, following him down the stairs. That bad, he confirmed. Marcus keeps doing this thing where he feeds Liam trail mix 1 piece at a time. 1 piece at a time. I almost drove off the road. The drive to the campsite took 2 hours, winding through increasingly dense forest until we reached a clearing that Marcus had somehow discovered on one of his hiking apps. It was perfect, secluded, with a small lake about 100 yards away and enough space for 2 tents. Wait, 2 tents? I asked as we started unloading the car. I thought we'd need at least 3. Marcus appeared, his arm wrapped around Liam's waist. Jake said he didn't mind sharing with you something about how you don't snore like I do. You sound like a chainsaw having an asthma attack, Jake interjected, throwing me a tent bag. Besides, Alex and I have shared rooms before, no big deal. No big deal, right. except every other time we'd shared a room, there had been two separate beds, and I hadn't been completely, hopelessly in love with him. Cool, I managed, my voice only slightly strained. No big deal. We spent the afternoon setting up camp, gathering firewood, and engaging in increasingly ridiculous debates about whether hot dogs or bratwurst were the superior camping food. Liam, who apparently took his camping cuisine seriously, gave an impassioned 5-minute speech about the importance of proper sausage-to-bun ratios. Jake kept catching my eye during the rant, and we dissolve into silent laughter. This was what I loved about us, this easy synchronicity, the way we could communicate entire conversations with just a look. It was also what made everything so impossibly hard. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, we gathered around the fire. Marcus had brought a Bluetooth speaker, and soon the clearing filled with a carefully curated playlist of indie folk and alternative rock. Liam was teaching Marcus some complicated card game, while Jake and I sat on opposite ends of a log, nursing beers and watching the flames dance. "I'm glad you came," Jake said suddenly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "I feel like I haven't really hung out with you in forever." My throat tightened. "Yeah, well, work's been busy." "Bullshit." He turned to face me fully, and in the firelight, his eyes looked almost amber. "You've been avoiding me. Did I do something?" "No," I said quickly, too quickly. "Jake, no, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then what?" He shifted closer, and I could smell his cologne mixed with wood smoke. "Talk to me, Alex. We used to tell each other everything." Used to past tense, because somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being able to be completely honest with him. How could I tell him that every time he mentioned a new date, every time he casually threw his arm around my shoulders, every time he smiled at me like I was someone special, it felt like my heart was being slowly torn in half. "Just needed some space to figure stuff out," I said finally, hatting how vague it sounded. "Nothing to do with you." He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you ever want to talk about whatever you're figuring out, I'm here, always." "I know," I whispered. "Thank you." The night deepened, the temperature dropping until we were all huddled close to the fire. Marcus and Liam eventually announced they were calling it a night, disappearing into their tent with barely concealed grins. Jake made a gagging sound that had me laughing into my beer. "How much do you want to bet they don't actually sleep tonight?" he muttered. "I'm not taking that bet. It's guaranteed money." He laughed, then stood and stretched, his shirt riding up to reveal a strip of toned stomach. I looked away quickly, focusing very intently on the fire. "We should probably turn in too," he said. "Marcus wants to hit the trail by 8 tomorrow, which means we'll actually leave by 9:30. "Sounds about right." The tent was smaller than I'd expected, much smaller. We'd managed to fit both our sleeping bags inside, but there was maybe 6 inches of space between them. 6 inches. I was going to die. "Cozy," Jake commented, crawling inside and immediately starting to shed layers. He pulled off his hoodie, revealing the t-shirt underneath, then hesitated. "Do you care if I sleep in just my boxers? I run hot." I absolutely cared. I cared very much. "No, that's fine. I'll probably do the same." We changed in awkward silence, both of us trying to take up as little space as possible in the confined area. Once we were settled in our respective sleeping bags, Jake reached over and turned off the battery-powered lantern, plunging us into darkness. "Hey, Alex," his voice came through the dark. "Yes. I really am glad you're here. I missed you, man." My chest ached. "I missed you too." "Good night." "Night, Jake." I lay there, listening to his breathing gradually slow and deepen, hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. The tent felt impossibly small and somehow still too big, close enough that I could feel his warmth, far enough that I couldn't reach out and touch him. Sleep felt impossible, but somehow, with the sound of Jake's steady breathing beside me and the crickets chirping outside, I eventually drifted off. I woke to hushed voices and soft laughter from the tent next to ours. Marcus and Liam, apparently starting their morning in a very good mood. I groaned, checking my phone. 7:43 a.m., still technically before Marcus's proposed departure time. Next to me, Jake stirred, rolling over in his sleeping bag until he was facing me. His hair was adorably mussed, and his eyes were still heavy with sleep. "Morning," he mumbled. "Are they seriously going at it again?" "Sounds like it." He laughed, the sound warm and sleep-rough. "Remind me to never go camping with new couples again. It's torture." Something about the way he said it, torture, made me look at him more carefully. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read, something almost wistful. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, but he didn't look away. We lay there, facing each other in the dim morning light filtering through the tent, and for a moment something shifted in the air between us. Something charged and confusing and a little bit terrifying. Then Marcus's voice rang out. "Rise and shine, gentlemen, we've got a mountain to conquer." The moment broke. Jake rolled his eyes and sat up, and just like that, we were back to normal. Whatever normal meant anymore. The trail was more challenging than any of us had anticipated. What Marcus's hiking app had described as a moderate, scenic route turned out to be a steep, rocky climb that had us sweating within the first 30 minutes. "Moderate," Liam gasped, pausing to catch his breath. "I'm going to leave a very strongly worded review on that app." "Admit it, you love it," Marcus teased, kissing his boyfriend's temple. "This is character building." "I have enough character, thanks," Liam shot back, but he was smiling. Jake and I had naturally fallen into our usual hiking rhythm, him slightly ahead, occasionally looking back to make sure I was keeping up, me enjoying the view. The view of the forest, obviously. Definitely not the view of Jake's shoulders and the way his t-shirt clung to his back. About an hour in, we reached a clearing with a breathtaking view of the valley below. Mountains stretched out in every direction, their peaks still dusted with snow despite it being late spring. We all stood there for a moment, catching our breath and taking it in. "Okay, this might be worth Marcus's character building," I admitted. Jake moved to stand beside me, close enough that our arms almost touched. "It's incredible," he said quietly, then even quieter, "I'm glad I'm seeing this with you." I turned to look at him, confused by the intensity in his voice. But before I could respond, Marcus was rallying us to continue. The higher we climbed, the more the forest changed. The air grew thinner, crisper, the trees became more sparse, and the silences between our group's conversations grew longer as we each fell into our own thoughts. I found myself watching Jake more than I should. There was something different about him today. He seemed quieter, more contemplative. Several times I caught him looking at me with that same unreadable expression from the tent that morning. We stopped for lunch at another clearing, this one with a small stream running through it. While Marcus and Liam wandered off to filter water, Jake and I sat on a large boulder, sharing the sandwiches we'd packed. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said suddenly, staring at his sandwich rather than at me. "Of course." "Last night when I said you'd been avoiding me," he paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "Was it because of something I said, or did? Because I've been trying to figure it out for months and I can't." "Jake, no," I cut him off, hatting the worry in his voice. "You didn't do anything wrong, I promise." "Then why?" He finally looked at me, and the vulnerability in his expression made my chest tighten. "Why does it feel like there's this thing between us now, this distance that wasn't there before?" I set down my sandwich, my appetite gone. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and maybe, in some small way, hoping for. I could lie, I could deflect, or I could be honest and risk losing the most important friendship I'd ever had. "Because," I started, my voice barely above a whisper, "things changed for me, and I didn't know how to tell you without ruining everything." "What changed?" I closed my eyes. "How I feel about you." The silence that followed felt eternal. I could hear the stream bubbling nearby, the distant sound of Marcus and Liam talking, a bird calling somewhere overhead. But from Jake, nothing. "Alex," he finally said, and his voice was so gentle it hurt. "Look at me." I forced myself to open my eyes to meet his gaze. I expected pity, maybe awkwardness. What I didn't expect was the confusion in his eyes, not confusion about what I meant, but confusion that looked almost personal. "How long?" he asked. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." I swallowed hard. A while, maybe always in some way, I don't know. But it got harder to ignore about a year ago, and I thought if I just gave us some space, I could get over it, could go back to just being your friend. Did it work? "What do you think?" I laughed bitterly. "I'm on a camping trip, sharing a tent with you, slowly dying inside." "Alex." "It's fine," I interrupted, standing up quickly. "You don't have to say anything. You're straight. I know that. Everyone knows that. I'm not asking you to feel something you don't feel. I needed you to know why I've been distant, that's all." I started to walk away, but Jake caught my wrist. His hand was warm, his grip firm but gentle. "Wait, please." I stopped, but didn't turn around. "You're right that I've always said I'm straight," he said slowly, "and I meant it. Every time I said it, I believed it." He paused, and I felt him move closer. "But lately I've been questioning that, questioning a lot of things." My heart stopped. I turned to face him. "What are you saying?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated and uncertain, an expression I rarely saw on Jake's usually confident face. "I'm saying I don't know. I'm saying that when you started pulling away, it felt like I was losing something crucial. I'm saying that I've been watching you for months, trying to figure out why you were avoiding me, and somewhere along the way I realized." He trailed off. "Realized what?" "That maybe I was looking for excuses to be around you. That maybe when I dated all those girls, part of the reason none of them worked out was because they weren't you." I couldn't breathe. "Jake." "I know how this sounds," he continued quickly. "Trust me, I've been going crazy trying to understand it. I thought I was straight. I've always been attracted to women. But with you, it's different. You're different. And I can't stop thinking about what that means." "So what does it mean?" I whispered. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I know I don't want to lose you while I figure it out." Before I could respond, we heard Marcus calling out that they were ready to continue. Jake stepped back, his hands sliding away from my wrist. "Can we talk more about this?" he asked. "Tonight maybe just us." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The rest of the hike passed in a blur. I was hyper-aware of Jake's presence beside me, of every accidental brush of our hands, every glance he threw my way. Marcus and Liam seemed to notice something had shifted. They kept exchanging meaningful looks, but thankfully said nothing. We reached the summit just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The view was spectacular, but I barely registered it. My mind was spinning with everything Jake had said, with the impossible possibility that maybe, just maybe, this could be something real. The hike down was faster, gravity doing most of the work. By the time we reached camp, it was nearly dark. Marcus immediately started on dinner, some elaborate camping stew he'd been bragging about all day, while Liam set up more firewood. Jake and I moved through the motions of helping prepare the campsite, but there was a tension between us now. Not uncomfortable exactly, but charged, anticipatory. Dinner was delicious, filled with easy conversation and laughter, but I barely tasted it. I kept catching Jake watching me across the fire, his expression thoughtful. Once, our eyes met, and he gave me a small, almost nervous smile. Jake, nervous. It would have been funny if my own anxiety wasn't threatening to overwhelm me. After we'd cleaned up, Marcus pulled out a bottle of whiskey he'd smuggled in his pack. To celebrate surviving Marcus's moderate hike, Liam announced, and we all drank to that. The whiskey burned going down, warming me from the inside out. The conversation flowed easier after that, loosened by alcohol and the intimacy of firelight. Marcus told stories from his and Jake's early college days. Liam shared embarrassing anecdotes from his childhood. We laughed until our sides hurt. But eventually, as the fire burned lower and the temperature dropped, Marcus and Liam announced they were heading to bed. This time, their departure felt deliberate, like they were giving Jake and me space. And then it was just us, alone, with everything unsaid hanging in the air between us. So, Jake said after a long moment, we should probably talk. Yeah, I took another sip of whiskey for courage. We probably should. He moved from his log to sit beside me on mine, close enough that I could feel his warmth. I've been thinking about what I said earlier, on the hike. Me too, I've been thinking about literally nothing else. He laughed softly, same, and I keep coming back to the same question, what if? What if what? What if I'm not as straight as I thought? What if the reason I've never felt with anyone else what I feel when I'm with you is because, he took a deep breath, because it's you specifically, not just any person, you. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. And what do you feel when you're with me? Safe, he said immediately, understood, like I can be completely myself without pretending or performing. And lately I feel this pull, this need to be close to you, to touch you. He demonstrated by letting his hand rest on my knee. Even through my jeans, I could feel the heat of his palm. I tried to tell myself it was just friendship, but friends don't think about each other the way I think about you. How do you think about me? My voice came out rough. He turned to face me fully, and in the dying firelight, his eyes were dark and intense. I think about what it would feel like to kiss you. I think about whether your hands would feel as good on me as they do in my imagination. I think about waking up next to you and it being normal, being allowed. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't believe this was happening. But I'm also terrified, he continued, because I've never done this before. I don't know how to be with a man. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it. And most of all, I don't want to hurt you. You're too important to me. Jake, I finally managed. You're not going to hurt me by being honest. You're not going to hurt me by figuring yourself out. But what if I figure out I can't do this? What if I try and realize I'm not actually? Then we deal with that if it happens, I interrupted gently. But you can't know without trying. And I'd rather you try and it not work than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. He searched my face for a long moment. You'd really risk our friendship for this? Our friendship is already changed, I pointed out. We can't go back to before. We can only go forward, either as friends who know the truth and are okay with it, or as something more. Something more, he repeated softly, like he was testing the words. I like the sound of that. Yes. Yeah, he shifted closer, and suddenly there were only inches between us. Would it be okay if I kissed you? I just want to know, need to know what it feels like. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Jake leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't, I couldn't. I'd dreamed about this moment too many times to count. When his lips finally met mine, it was soft, tentative. His hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. It was better, sweeter, more real. When we pulled apart, we stayed close, foreheads touching. Wow, he breathed. That was. Yeah, I agreed, because I couldn't form complete sentences either. Can I do it again? I laughed, please. This time the kiss was deeper, more confident. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and I let myself touch him too, fingers sliding into his hair, feeling the warmth of his neck. He made a small sound against my mouth that shot straight through me. We kissed until the fire died to embers, until the cold finally drove us toward the warmth of the tent, until we were both breathless and grinning like idiots. Inside the tent, we settled into our sleeping bags, but this time Jake zipped his bag to mine, creating one larger space. We lay facing each other, and in the darkness, I could just make out his features. Is this okay? He whispered. More than okay. He reached out, his fingers finding mine in the dark, lacing them together. I can't believe I'm doing this. 3 days ago, if someone had told me I'd be lying in a tent holding hands with my best friend, with a guy, I would have laughed. And now it feels like the most natural thing in the world. He squeezed my hand. Is that crazy? No, I said softly. I think sometimes we build up these ideas about who we are, what we want, how we're supposed to be, and then something happens that makes us realize we were wrong, or maybe not wrong, just incomplete in our understanding. You've always been smarter than me, he murmured. Not true, you're brilliant. You just express it differently. See, smarter. He shifted closer, closing the remaining distance between us. Can we stay like this tonight? Just close. Yeah, I'd really like that. We fell asleep like that, hands intertwined, breathing synchronized, and I slept better than I had in months. Morning came with the sound of rain pattering against the tent. Jake and I woke almost simultaneously, blinking at each other in the grey light. Rain, he observed unnecessarily. Looks like it. Outside, we could hear Marcus and Liam discussing whether to wait it out or pack up and head home early. After a brief tent conference, we all voted for packing up. The hike had been the main event anyway, and sitting around in wet camping chairs had limited appeal. As we broke down the campsite in the drizzle, I kept catching Jake's eye. Each time, he'd smile, this small, private smile that was just for me. It made the cold rain and muddy ground completely bearable. The drive back was quieter than the drive up. Marcus and Liam dozed in the back seat while Jake drove and I sat in the passenger seat, watching the rain-slicked highway roll past. His right hand rested on the center console, and after a moment's hesitation, I placed mine over it. He glanced over, surprised, then smiled and turned his hand palm up, lacing our fingers together. We drove like that for miles, not talking, just existing together in this new space we'd created. When we dropped Marcus and Liam off at their apartment, Marcus leaned forward before getting out. Whatever's going on with you two, I'm here if you need to talk, both of you. Jake and I exchanged glances. That obvious? I asked. Painfully, Liam confirmed with a grin, but in a good way. You both looked happier than I've seen you in ages. After they left, Jake drove us to his apartment instead of mine. We sat in his car for a moment, the rain drumming on the roof. Come inside, he asked. I think we should probably talk about everything when we're not exhausted and covered in mud. I nodded and we made our way into his building. His apartment was familiar. I'd been there hundreds of times, but it felt different now. Or maybe I was different now. Jake put on coffee while I cleaned up in his bathroom. When I emerged, he'd changed into dry clothes and had 2 steaming mugs waiting on his coffee table. We sat on his couch, close but not quite touching. So, he started, I guess we should figure out what happens next. Yeah, I wrapped my hands around my mug. What do you want to happen? He was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I want to try this, try us. But I also need to be realistic about where I'm at. I've never been with a man before. I've never even thought about it seriously until recently. There's going to be a learning curve. I'm not expecting you to have everything figured out immediately, I assured him. This is new territory for both of us. I've dated men before, but I've never dated my best friend. That's scary in its own way. So we're dating, a smile played at his lips, just to be clear. If you want to be. I do, he said firmly. I really do, but Alex, I need you to promise me something. What? If at any point this isn't what you need, if I'm not enough, or if I'm taking too long to figure things out, you'll tell me. I don't want you waiting around for me to get comfortable while you're unhappy. I set down my mug and took his hand. Jake, I've been in love with you for over a year. I've waited this long. I can be patient while you explore what this means for you, but I need you to promise me something too. Anything. Promise me you'll be honest. If you're struggling, if you're having doubts, if this isn't working for you, tell me. Don't pretend for my sake. I promise. He pulled me closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. I settled against him, resting my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. This is nice. He murmured, being able to just hold you. Yeah, it is. We stayed like that for a long time, comfortable in the silence. Eventually, Jake spoke again. Can I tell you something that's probably going to sound weird? Always. I think part of me knew about you, about what you felt, and maybe about what I felt too. I think I was just scared to acknowledge it. I lifted my head to look at him. Why scared? Because acknowledging it meant everything would change, meant questioning things about myself I thought were fixed. And also, he paused, I was scared of losing you. If I admitted I knew how you felt and I couldn't reciprocate, or if I tried to reciprocate and messed everything up, the stakes felt too high. I get that, I said softly. I was scared too, still am a little. What scares you? That this is too good to be real, that I'm going to wake up and realize it was just a really vivid dream, that something will happen and we'll realize we work better as friends than as whatever we are now. Boyfriends, Jake said. I think the word you're looking for is boyfriends. The word sent a thrill through me. Is that what you want? Yeah, he cupped my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. If you'll have me. Instead of answering with words, I kissed him. This time there was no hesitation, no uncertainty, just us, finally on the same page. The next few weeks were a blur of discovery. Jake approached our relationship the way he approached everything, with enthusiasm and determination to understand it fully. He asked questions about everything, what I liked, what I wanted, how to navigate being a newly out bisexual man in his late 20s. We took things slowly physically, letting Jake set the pace. Sometimes we just kissed for hours on his cooch. Other times we'd lie in his bed, fully clothed, just talking and touching and learning each other's bodies in innocent ways. I never realized how intimate this could be, he said one evening, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. Just touching someone without it having to lead anywhere. It doesn't have to lead anywhere, I assured him. We have all the time in the world. But gradually, as Jake became more comfortable, things did progress. The first time he initiated something more than kissing, we were watching a movie on his cooch. He'd pulled me against him, my back to his chest, his arms wrapped around me. Then I felt him press a kiss to my neck. Is this okay? He murmured against my skin. Very okay. He kissed his way up to my ear, and I felt him smile when I shivered. Good, because I've been wanting to do this for days. We didn't finish the movie. The hardest part was navigating the outside world. Jake wasn't ready to be publicly out yet, which I understood and respected, but it meant we existed in this bubble, private, intimate, just us. When we were with friends, we had to be careful about how we touched, how we looked at each other. Marcus and Liam knew, of course. They'd figured it out during the camping trip and had been completely supportive, but Jake wasn't ready to tell his family or his other friends yet. I will, he assured me one night when I could tell the secrecy was weighing on him. I just need a little more time to figure out how to explain it, how to explain that I'm still me, I'm just also this. You don't owe anyone an explanation, I reminded him. I know, but I want to give them one anyway, especially my parents. They're going to have questions. 3 months into our relationship, Jake finally told his parents. He called me immediately afterward, his voice tight with emotion. How did it go? I asked anxiously. Better than I expected, worse than I hoped, he laughed shakily. They were shocked. My mom cried, which she swears were happy tears, but I'm not entirely sure. My dad went quiet for a while, but then he said that if you make me happy, that's what matters. Do I make you happy? Alex, you make me happier than I knew I could be. So yeah, you really do. 6 months in, we took a weekend trip back to the campsite where it all started. This time, it was just the two of us. We hiked the same trail, laughing about how much easier it seemed now. We set up our tent in the same clearing. We sat by the fire as the sun set, talking about everything and nothing. You know what's funny? Jake said, pulling me closer against him. I spent so many years thinking I had myself all figured out, thought I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. And now I realize I was only seeing part of the picture. You filled in the rest. He kissed my temple. I'm still figuring things out, still learning what it means to be bisexual, to be in a same-sex relationship, to be open about this part of myself. But every day it gets a little easier. I'm proud of you, I said softly. I know this hasn't been easy. Neither has being patient with me while I figured my shit out. But you stayed. Of course I stayed, You're worth staying for. We fell into a comfortable silence, watching the fire wrapped up in each other. Above us, the stars were coming out, the same stars that had witnessed our first kiss months ago. I love you, Jake said suddenly. I should have said it before. I've been feeling it for a while, but I love you, Alex, completely. My throat tightened with emotion. I love you too, so much. Yeah, he pulled back to look at me, his eyes bright even in the darkness. Yeah, I think I have for a long time. He kissed me then, deep and sweet and full of promise. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For being patient, for being honest even when it was hard, for giving me the space to figure this out. He paused. For loving me before I knew I needed to be loved like this. Always, I promised, always. We slept in the tent that night, wrapped around each other in ways that would have seemed impossible just months ago. The sounds of the forest surrounded us, crickets chirping, an owl hooting somewhere distant, the rustle of wind through leaves. Hey Alex, Jake's voice was sleepy content. MMM. I'm really glad I agreed to that camping trip. I smiled into the darkness, me too. And I'm really glad I was brave enough to kiss you. Second best decision you've ever made. Second best, he sounded affronted. What was the first? Deciding to kiss me again. He laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest where my head rested. Fair point, though I think I'm going to make that decision approximately 1,000,000 more times. Only 1,000,000. Fine, infinity. I'm going to kiss you infinity times. Now that's a plan I can get behind. He kissed the top of my head. Go to sleep. We have a whole lifetime of plans to make tomorrow. A whole lifetime. The thought should have been scary. We'd only officially been together for 6 months, after all. But with Jake's arms around me and the sound of his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, it felt exactly right. 1 year later, I stood in the same clearing where everything had changed. But this time, we weren't alone. Marcus and Liam were there, along with Jake's parents, my parents, and a small group of our closest friends. Jake stood across from me, looking devastatingly handsome in a casual button-down shirt and slacks. We decided against a traditional wedding. It didn't feel like us. Instead, we'd chosen to have a simple commitment ceremony in the place where our story really began. When we came here 2 years ago, Jake began, his voice carrying through the clearing, I thought I knew who I was. I thought I had my whole life figured out. Then this guy, he gestured to me, his eyes bright with love, changed everything. It wasn't easy, he continued, accepting that I'd been wrong about something I thought was fundamental to my identity, learning to be vulnerable in new ways, coming out to family and friends, but every single difficult moment was worth it, because it led me to understanding what real love feels like. He took my hands in his. Alex, you saw me before I saw myself. You loved me before I knew I needed to be loved this way. You were patient while I figured out who I really am, and now I get to spend the rest of my life being exactly that person with you. I was crying. I'd promised myself I wouldn't, but here we were. Jake, you taught me that sometimes the best love stories aren't the ones we plan. They're the ones that surprise us, that challenge us, that help us become better versions of ourselves. You were always my best friend. Now you get to be my everything. We exchanged simple silver bands as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in the same oranges and pinks we'd seen that first night. When we kissed, our friends and family erupted in cheers. Later, as we sat around the campfire, the same campfire where Jake had first told me he questioned his sexuality, where we'd first kissed, he pulled me close. No regrets, I asked softly. Not a single one, he kissed my temple, you. Just one. He pulled back, concerned. What? That we didn't figure this out sooner. Think of all the time we wasted. He smiled, that familiar, heart-stopping smile that still made my breath catch. We found our way eventually. That's what matters. Yeah, I agreed, settling back against him. That's what matters. Above us, the stars came out one by one, witnesses to our story. A story that started with a camping trip, a borrowed tent, and two people brave enough to challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves. A story that was just beginning.